You made it. It's Friday. I always love Friday. And this Friday, I've got some great stuff lined up for you. Have you made your plans for Monday? I'm skipping right to Monday because Karen Read. It's Karen Read week, right? This begins again, the do-over trial, the second murder trial for Karen Read. And there's some stuff that happened this week. She got herself a new lawyer, and it's not just any lawyer. It is a lawyer who actually sat as a juror in her first murder trial. Of course, she faced trial for the murder of that boyfriend on the left, a police officer, and because the jury couldn't get it all together, come up with a bunch of verdicts, they're doing another trial. But she did something else. She decided to sit for a documentary. Have you seen it? If not, I have a sneak peek. Take a look.
John was a Boston police officer. We went to the bar with a bunch of cops. Jen McCabe invited us to the Alberts. Last I ever talked to him when he got out of my car at Brian Albert's house.
I was waiting and waiting and waiting for this doc because she didn't take the stand in her first trial. Is she going to take the stand in her second trial, or did you just see it? Was that her testimony? Did she do herself any favors? Mark Garagos is going to tell me what he thinks about all this in a moment. Also, Kanye is getting more headlines. And I would have just gone right past this, right? I would have said, yeah, okay, he's really lost the plot. He's jumped the shark, all the rest. Except now it's getting troublesome because 4 little kids are involved. And Kim Kardashian, it appears, has had enough. The latest thing that he did involving accused sex traffickers with his kids. I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. It has Kim Kardashian going to a judge for help. Harvey Levin has all the inside scoop from TMZ, and he was kind enough to spill all the tea to me. So you're going to hear all of that tonight. And then also, I always made a bunch of money as a teenager as a babysitter. Little known fact, I was a babysitter for hockey star Bobby Hull. And I always had to do the thing that babysitters had to do, which is look under the bed when the kid is scared. You know, kids think monsters are under the bed. And so I always did, and I always told them, there's no monster under your bed. But in Kansas, a babysitter did that, checked under the bed because the kid was scared, and she found a monster, a man under the bed. I will take the story from there and tell you what happened, but it was not pretty. And I mean, just this catastrophic scene ensued. I've got all of that for you, but I want to take you back here. If you remember the Karen Read trial, and I bet you do, you know that it had everything. A cop found dead in the snow, a girlfriend charged with murder, allegations of cover-ups, conspiracies, and frame-ups. The only thing it really didn't have was the verdict, right? The jury could not decide on all of the charges, whether Karen Read was a heartless killer or a hapless scapegoat. But in 4 short days, despite the defense's best efforts to get the case dismissed, a new jury will be picked to hear the exact same evidence. That is not to say that nothing is different from the first trial, or should I say mistrial. For starters, the lead investigator in the case is out of a job. Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor was fired, quote, dishonorably discharged, end quote. And that just happened last week. He was dumped for having sent crude and misogynistic text messages about the subject that he was investigating, Karen Read. And he did it during the investigation. Oh, and also he was found to have shared confidential details of the case with unauthorized people. Oh, and also they discovered he'd been drinking on duty and driving his police cruiser after drinking on duty. So he's on the outs. Another key difference from last time, the people who may be called for jury duty next week are far more likely this time round to have heard Karen Read's version of what happened the night her boyfriend died. And that is because Karen Read herself opened up and told her entire story to Investigation Discovery. Even though she didn't take the witness stand in her last trial, she's talking now in a docuseries that just dropped called A Body in the Snow. And yes, here's a look.
Karen Karen Reed is accused of hitting John O'Keefe with her SUV and leaving him to die in the snow.
Their relationship was not a happy one.
Not a single witness actually saw this happen.
There's a whole other side of the story.
This is funny, Ms. Reed.
They've got her guilty already.
So, did you drive your car into John?
Doing this film is my testimony. I want to say what happened exactly as it happened. John was a Boston police officer. We went to the bar with a bunch of cops. Jen McCabe invited us to the Alberts. Last I ever talked to him when he got out of my car at Brian Albert's house.
Everybody liked Karen, and everything changed.
He was found dead on the lawn of another police officer.
This is one of their own, and that raises the stakes.
Miss Reed stated that she hit him 3 times. I hit him. I hit him.
I hit him. That statement doesn't appear on any of the tapes.
They were shocked.
I am not on trial. I am a witness.
It's impossible to have any sympathy. They're all lying.
She'd smile or laugh.
She's posing for pictures.
Her behavior, in conjunction with the hard evidence, points in one direction.
DNA evidence placed parts of John on Karen's car.
Feels like I'm in a bad dream. This can't be real.
She was angry. She had been drinking.
How many calls?
There was over 50.
What did you text about going through Karen Reed's phone?
No news so far.
There were gasps.
One of the most uncomfortable moments of this entire trial.
Shame on you, sir.
Elle magazine wants to feature me.
She was the happiest murder defendant in America.
You're either pro Karen Reed or you are pro police.
It's become a civil war.
This justice system will never be the same after this.
I can't believe what's happening to me.
Yeah, it is good. And that brings me to the third and most jaw-dropping change from the first Karen Reed trial. Her defense team has a brand new member this week, an attorney who literally had a front row seat for Karen's first trial, because that attorney was actually a juror and sat on the panel in Karen Reed's first trial. Did you get all that? Crazy. Her name is Victoria George, and she was an alternate juror. So because of that, she didn't deliberate with the others. But still, she says what she saw and heard during Karen's first trial shook her faith in this system. And now she says she wants to help prevent what she calls a miscarriage of justice. And so now I turn, as I often do when my head is spinning, to my friend Mark Garagos, criminal defense attorney and co-host of 2 hit podcasts, Reasonable Doubt and 2 Angry Men. Okay, happy Friday, Mark Garagos. More than 6 million people have seen that docuseries. And I can't help but think if it hurts her. Do you think it helps her, or do you think she did a disservice to herself by sitting for the doc?
No, I think it actually helps her, or it will help her. I think plenty of people have seen it. I think your setup piece was accurate in that it's polarizing in a lot of ways. But I also think that in a lot of ways, I don't understand how they're retrying this case. So it's strange to me. There's a lot of strange things. I love the fact that Alan Jackson has added a alternate juror to his defense team. I have hired both jurors after the fact and on more than one occasion. I have never added a juror onto the defense team a second time around. I've just hired them the second time around.
I totally get that part, right? If you're lucky enough to have a juror who will make him or herself public and then join the team. But man, oh man, I have never heard of a lawyer who has sat on a panel and then joined a second trial. Is it ethical? Is that juror, I mean, I'm assuming she's allowed to do it because she's on the team, but I mean, I suppose the question I have is like, it's got to come up in voir dire, right? Like this has all got to come up in voir dire for people sitting on the panel. Did you see the documentary? And what about this lawyer?
Well, I don't know. I was contemplating the ethics of it. I can't think of, I suppose you might have some head scratching if it had been a juror who was deliberating. but I'm not so sure about that. I can't think of a better focus group, so to speak, than a lawyer who is an alternate, who then is going to be able to give the perspective of what happened in the first trial. So to that extent, I embrace it, and I think it makes a whole lot of sense. Remember, this is one of those circumstantial evidence whodunit cases that captivates people. I always say that these kinds of cases are the ones where they become polarizing. They become things where people want to do the investigation. And it's interesting to have lawyers on those kinds of cases. I think back to Scott Peterson, the foreperson of Scott Peterson's case before he was removed over our objections was a lawyer who was also a doctor. And he had a lot of questions about that circumstantial evidence case. And we wanted people who were rational, who were not going to be swayed by emotion. And so a lot of times in circumstantial evidence cases, you want lawyers on your jury. And I'm sure having that added perspective of having sat through this case once is invaluable. So I think it's a master stroke.
And I also hear engineers, because engineers like to connect things. They don't like chasms that they have to leap over. In their work, they connect. But let me ask you this. Trooper Michael Proctor was the lead investigator in Karen's case. And when he took the stand in that first murder trial, it was catastrophic. All this ugliness was coming out about him, going through her pictures on her phone and texting awful, nasty things about her private parts he's gone, right? He's been fired. But that doesn't mean that he won't be called as a witness, right? I just wonder if it's worth it to the state to do that, knowing the blistering cross-examination that would come next and what the jury would think of him.
Well, I'm not so sure that this time around he would actually testify. I think if called, depending on who calls, he may just invoke the Fifth. I've had that. Once again, I always tell war stories, but I remember Judge Schnegg, when she was on the bench in LA Superior Court, I actually got a cop on the stand to invoke the Fifth, and to quote her, that's a turd in the punch bowl. And that is potentially what you might have in a case like this. This guy's got some exposure. Part of what the evidence seems to suggest is that he had some culpability either before, during, or after. And I'm not making the accusation. I'm just kind of reiterating what the evidence tended to suggest. Not the least of which is, I think you described him as misogynistic. He's kind of just an a-hole.
Well, that's one way to put it, yeah. So let me ask you this. Does the defense call him? That sounds crazy, but does the defense call him and say, let's have your texts, sir? Because really, I think where the defense is strongest is trying to point to some kind of conspiracy among cops and a big blue wall of silence and people who are out to get her. It ain't like we haven't seen this in this jurisdiction before. The Canton Police Department is embroiled in the Sandra Birchmore catastrophe as well. A young girl who they said took her own life. She didn't. And the 6 cops there went along with it. And one of them had impregnated her. And so he's up on charges now. So I know you can't bring all that into her case, but you could certainly dabble in that if you called Trooper Proctor, right?
Well, by the way, I can't think of a reason not to call him if you're the defense. The integrity of the investigation is always an issue. Here you have, so basically, my client didn't do it, is what Alan is going to argue. And if you believe that the cops set it up, here is Exhibit A, B, and C all rolled into one. So absolutely. I just don't know if they are actually going to get this person to testify, because if he's got a lawyer who's got some neurons firing, he's going to probably invoke.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I'm still surprised the case is going forward, not for the reason that you mentioned off the bat, which is why are they retrying her? They literally had a jury panel that had decided she didn't murder. It's just that they didn't pull the jury and get it on the record, so here we go again. But that's under appeal still. And if by any chance that appellate action is successful, what happens with the process we're going into next week?
Well, if it was successful, you can raise once in jeopardy at any time. And that's what the argument is. The argument is they can't go forward on the greater charge because she was found not guilty in order to get to the lesser charge, which they hung on. If that's the case, I still am perplexed, and I've never talked to Alan about it as to why the jury was not, why they did not inquire as to the verdict. In order to hang, so people understand, you go down like rungs of a ladder. In order to get to the count that they hung on, you had to acquit on the higher count or the greater count. Why the judge didn't on her own sua sponte, I'll invoke a little Latin on Friday night, or at the request of the defense or the prosecution, poll the jury about that. I don't understand. Maybe I'm not in the weeds enough, but that has always perplexed me.
Always. Poll the jury. I mean, I am not a lawyer, and I know that's Rule 101 at the end. You've got to poll the jury, even if it's a mistrial. If it's if you get a guilty, you've got to poll the jury. Sometimes someone stands up and says, I feel awful about this. I was pushed into doing this. Yeah, I'm shocked they didn't. Absolutely. But I do understand that the form is weird, and they may actually be changing it in this jurisdiction. It's that you can only check the box if it's guilty. If it's not guilty, you move past the box, and therefore it looked as though it just hadn't been deliberated, but you're right. They did deliberate it. They said they got there, and they said, we didn't find her guilty of murder.
And that was not the only time in that trial that Alan Jackson raised some issue, and they kind of scratched their heads there and say, well, their answer was one of my favorite answers. We've always done it this way. They couldn't explain it, but they just default to we've always done it this way. And that's one of the reasons I like going into other jurisdictions to try cases, because it gives you a perspective. You get kind of, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, so to speak.
I love the fact that you spent your Friday night with me. Mark Garagos, thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Always, Ashleigh. Have a great weekend.
Okay. Next Friday. I'll see you here.
See you then.
Garagos, Two Angry Men and Reasonable Doubt, his two podcasts. If you have been put off by Kanye West and his eye-popping stunts, you are not alone. The mother of his kids has had enough too. From Nazi t-shirts to parading his naked lover out in public, Kanye's actions are catching up with him. After the break, what Kim Kardashian wants a judge to do about it. That's next.
Thanks for listening to NewsNation on the Go. I'm Chris Cuomo. This is America's fastest growing cable news network, delivering fact-based, unbiased news from all sides.
Parents share kids, but don't share a home. You got to make some concessions, even when one of those parents is Kanye West. But even then, there are limits, and Kim Kardashian may have just reached hers. Kim and Kanye share 4 little kids, as you may know, and Ye isn't known for being particularly stable or reasonable. What he has been is erratic, combative, anti-Semitic, and more than that. He has been that way for a long time now, too. Do you remember the 2009 VMAs when he grabbed the mic from Taylor Swift to proclaim that Beyonce should have won the award instead? Yeah, in 2022, things really went off the rails when Ye threatened to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. And that little tirade cost him a multi-million-dollar deal with Adidas. Now, of course, his anti-Jewish rants on X are almost routine. Whether he's declaring, I'm a Nazi, or describing Hitler as so fresh. And who can forget his Super Bowl ad for Yeezy.com, where the only thing on the website for sale was a t-shirt emblazoned with a swastika. Through it all, he and Kim Kardashian have shared custody of those 4 little Wests, but that may be about to change. Kim did not hold back to friends when Kanye's wife showed up like that on the red carpet at the Grammys this year, basically naked. But when Kim learned that Kanye invited accused sex traffickers Andrew and Tristan Tate over to record a podcast with their daughter North present, Kim asked a judge for an emergency custody hearing. That's a topic that TMZ's Harvey Levin tackled this week on his podcast, Two Angry Men. So I asked Harvey about it. Harvey, what is going on with Kim and Kanye and their kids?
Well, this is an impossible situation for Kim. So Kanye is off the rails. And, you know, we all know he suffers from a mental illness. He is just lost it lately. And I'm not talking about the anti-Semitism. I'm not talking about the racism or any of that stuff. What I'm talking about is he has joint custody with Kim of their 4 kids. And Kim has had serious issues about the safety of their kids when they're around Kanye. Just a couple of weeks ago, Kanye brought their oldest daughter north to a recording studio where she recorded a song that included Diddy, and the Tate brothers showed up at the studio. She got him out of there. Now, we had Dr. Phil on our Two Angry Men podcast, and Dr. Phil is saying Kim, at a point, has to do something, whether it's trying to get Kanye stripped of his custody rights or something, if there really is danger. And if she does nothing, she could actually lose custody and the kids could be taken out of the home. I know that sounds crazy, but it's a possibility if these kids are in danger. Now, she's a really good parent, Ashleigh, and, you know, she's really dealing with a tough situation. But at a point, I think Phil is right. She has to do something.
That's so hard to believe, you know, if she's just desperately trying to keep the family as normal as possible, and if she doesn't sort of go to the courts, she could be the one who ends up suffering. Although I think she did request an emergency custody hearing. I mean, these are always sealed, but does anybody have any sources on what's been happening with regard to the judge in the case?
Yeah, we do. So there is a provision in their divorce settlement that says when they disagree on issues, they have to go for a minimum of 3 hours of mediation, and then it can go to the judge. So with this thing where North recorded that song with Diddy, Kim objected and said it was going to be dangerous for her child to be on this song. And they went to mediation. Kanye agreed not to release the song. 2 days later, he released it. And he said, the man has the last word, his words. And so that's the system. Now, the question is, can Kim now go to the actual family law judge and say, take away his legal joint custody, take away his physical joint custody, something? And, you know, her fear, we're told, is it will just trigger him. And it could become even more dangerous. So she's between a rock and a hard place here. What do you do when the person you're dealing with is a powder keg and you're worried that whatever move you make, if he views it as aggressive, is going to set him off?
Well, you know, Kanye's right in one sense when he says the man has the last word. It's just not the man he thinks. It is the man as in the man, the judge. When you defy a judge, it doesn't go well. And so if she's going to take this back to the judge and say, look, your order was defied, that will speak very poorly for Kanye. But you're right. The whole powder keg issue. I mean, at this point, Harvey, what more is there that he could do? I mean, he seems to be doing everything at DEFCON 5. You know, it's just that we haven't seen maybe that level of danger with the kids. It's one thing to be on a song with Diddy. It's another to be in Diddy's presence, perhaps, or someone else's presence. And along came the Tate brothers.
The Tate brothers.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. These guys, right?
They showed up at the recording studio.
They're facing charges in Romania. They flew back to Florida thinking that they would be safe. Pam Bondi decided to launch an investigation into them. Last I heard, they went back to Romania, but clearly justice is chasing the Tate brothers. So that is something that a judge could definitely consider a danger to children, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would think, but again, does Kim go to court and because look, North loves her father. He does not see the kids much at all. He sees North when they record and all, but they want their father. And now what does Kim do? Does Kim say, I'm going to deny you access to your father because it puts you in danger, and then she has a problem with the kids? What does she do? There's no good answer here. It's almost an impossible situation.
Has she made it clear to anyone, even, in her family or close to her, what kind of an arrangement she would like? I mean, I think everybody wants what's best for kids, and having parents in your life, that's important. Does she want a certain time limit with him? Does she want supervision if he's with the kids? Or has she really not made that public at all?
Well, what I know she wants is that if there were normal circumstances, she wants her kids to have a relationship with their father. She really wants that, and she has really strived to get that. The problem is Kanye's making it impossible. And so she doesn't necessarily just want to cut the cord right now, and she's not sure what that's going to do, given the fact that he will defy anything. That you tell Kanye he can't do something, and he will then do everything he can to do it. And so this is the problem. I can't give you a clear answer on what to do to solve this, because I'm not sure there is one. It's one of those situations. Yeah. I just don't think there is one.
It's hard. Did anybody mention anything about Bianca Censori's nudity, her constant nudity? Were the kids exposed to that as well?
Well, they've certainly seen it, and they've been around Bianca. They've seen it, on social media and whatnot. They've been around Bianca a lot. I'm told they like Bianca. So I don't know when they're in private, what's going on. This feels very performative to me with Bianca, so it seems like something that she does in public. I doubt she's doing this around the kids. I really don't think so. But they do see that. And, Kanye is the puppet master here.
Didn't Kanye accuse Kim, I think just maybe this week even, of being a sex trafficker because she was involved in an FKA Twigs song? What was the story behind that?
Yeah, he did. He accused the whole family of it. It's all ridiculous. This is all in Kanye's head. And, it's just a ridiculous thing. But again, there are consequences to it. And these kids go to school. Their classmates hear about all this stuff. It can create a danger to them, she believes. So now the question, what do you do? And again, we get back to the same thing. There just isn't a good answer to that. But there has to be something. Nothing puts her in jeopardy in terms of custody rights. But something, I don't know what that something is.
Unless, of course, she does nothing. You're so right about that. Hey, Harvey, thank you for this. By the way, folks, you've got to check out Harvey's latest podcast with Mark Garagos. It's called Two Angry Men. I just love the name of it alone. And I love the faces that you chose for the picture, Harvey.
We don't look angry enough.
Not at all. Thanks for this, Harvey.
Thanks, Ashley.
Okay, if you're as shocked as I am to see that the Rust movie is finally coming to the big screen, have I got a trailer for you. It has been 3.5 years since Alec Baldwin shot the cinematographer dead in an accident on the set. And with his criminal charges behind him forever, the evidence is now being released on the big screen. But will the world want to see it? We've got a sneak peek plus an update on just how well his reality show is doing. You know the one with all those kids. Ooh, that's next.
You're listening to Banfield on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
I guess that's showbiz for you. The movie was plagued by years of lawsuits and scandals, a deadly shooting, and several criminal cases, but it looks like the Alec Baldwin film called Rust is finally being released. It could win every award there is and still be best known for the film whose cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, was accidentally killed on set by its lead actor, Alec Baldwin. As I'm sure you'll remember, Baldwin stood trial for involuntary manslaughter, and in a made-for-Hollywood ending, the case was thrown out. But the movie got made, and now you can see it on the big screen coming in May. We just got the official trailer, and I will admit that when I saw it, I was looking and looking and looking for that scene in the church where Baldwin accidentally fired a very real bullet out of a prop gun. Maybe you can spot it. Take a look.
The only order that exists in this world is the order we impose. If a man loses sight of that, he's got nothing.
God bless the wicked. They continue to pay my bills. Some things in this life you can't get back, I reckon. Ain't waiting on neither one of us.
Did you catch that dialogue? Some things in this life you can't get back, I reckon. And heaven ain't waiting on either one of us. Definitely some double meanings there. Oh, and as for the credits in that trailer, Helena Hutchins is listed as cinematographer, but you may have noticed that her husband Matthew Hutchins is one of the executive producers. And that is part of the wrongful death settlement between Hutchins' family and Alec Baldwin. And while it remains to be seen if people are going to flock to the theaters to see that movie, Alec Baldwin's other major project since filming Rust, that one is not faring too well. You may have seen the splashy campaign to launch his new reality show with his wife Hilaria. It's called The Baldwins. It is a weekly show on TLC featuring their 7 kids and the mayhem that ensues with having 7 kids.
7 children, 6 animals, 2 parents. A wild family. We've had bad moments, but we found our foundation. She says you should look like this. 1989. We're solid and we're here together.
While the trailer looked great, the premiere underperformed other shows on TLC. And since then, the program has lost almost a third of its viewers. So it looks like Alec Baldwin could use a little TLC right now, especially from that network. Still to come, where do you go for a picture-perfect getaway when you live in Hawaii? A Maui couple flew to Honolulu to celebrate a birthday with a hike on a rugged cliffside. Now the wife is in a Honolulu hospital and her doctor husband is charged with trying to throw her off that cliff. But wait until you hear about the tiny little weapon police say he was really planning to use on her. All next.
We've built On Balance for viewers who look at the world not left and right, but right and wrong. Dealing with the issues that matter to Americans, not the issues that matter to Washington. Is there less of a stigma to not going to college and going into the trades? We give all sides their best argument and then challenge them. Why wouldn't it be better for you guys to do it? That's real journalism.
On Balance with Leland Vittert, weeknights at 9/8 Central, only on NewsNation.
Something made Ariel Koenig say no. when her husband, Dr. Gerhard Koenig, asked her to take a selfie with him. It was on the edge of a 1,000-foot cliff near Honolulu, and that little voice probably saved her life. Sadly, it didn't save her from a brutal attack moments later when the doctor allegedly threw her to the ground, battered her with a rock until other hikers came up the trail. If all of this sounds familiar, we told you about it earlier in the week when it happened, on Monday. And tonight, we know a whole lot more. For one thing, Gerhard, an anesthesiologist on the island of Maui, is now charged with attempted murder, and he's being held without bail. Police say he took off when his alleged attack was interrupted, but was found hours later hiding in the bushes. We have also learned from court documents that Ariel, the victim, screamed to the passersby, "He's trying to kill me." And the most chilling detail yet, police say that Ariel told them that her husband pulled out 2 syringes and tried to inject her with something, but failed. She was taken to the hospital in critical condition, but her housekeeper has told our Honolulu affiliate that she is, quote, while she's not, quote, in a good state, she is expected to pull through. The doctor, however, he's due back in court on Monday. And by the way, that trip that they took over to the island of Oahu and the breathtaking hike up the Palipuka Trail, that was supposed to be a trip to celebrate Ariel Koenig's 36th birthday. I've also got an update for you tonight on a story that we've been closely following for a few weeks now. Very disturbing story. A Connecticut woman accused of holding her adult stepson captive for decades. She faced a judge today. Kimberly Sullivan pleaded not guilty to assault, kidnapping, and cruelty. Her 32-year-old stepson was found locked in a storage room in the family home after he set fire to it, trying to free himself. The first responders who got there said that the man weighed just 68 pounds when they found him, and that he told police he'd been locked up and starved and physically abused for at least 21 years since the age of 11. Kimberly Sullivan is now out on bail, but she's wearing a GPS device, and that is something that actually upset her stepson. The prosecutors say that victim specifically asked them, "Why is she out walking around when I was locked up in a room for 20 years?" That stepmother is due back in court April 22nd, but he is reportedly still in the hospital with a long road to recovery ahead of him. Coming up next, do you remember this terrifying scene from the horror movie Poltergeist? I had nightmares for years because of that movie and that scene. The fear of monsters under the bed, that is a horror movie staple, the kind that stays with us for years. So imagine what happened when a babysitter, trying to prove to a little kid in Kansas that there is no such thing as monsters under the bed, actually came face to face with a man literally under that child's bed. It happened. And you will not believe what happened next. We've got the full story and the fallout coming up.
Thanks for listening to News Nation on the Go. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. We're here for you 24/7 on the News Nation app or on your Alexa. Just say, play News Nation.
If you have ever had to care for little kids, you've probably spent a lot of time on your knees, cleaning up messes, looking for the toys, or looking for clothes, or looking for food, or just praying. And yes, you have probably done that check under the bed for monsters. My question to you now is, have you ever found one? Did you? Did you ever find a monster lurking under a child's bed, just waiting for you to turn off the light and go away so that it could do some monstrous deed? because a babysitter in Kansas did. She literally found a monster under the child's bed just the other night. She peeked under the bed just to ease the fears of the little kid that she had just tucked in, and she came face to face with Martin Villalobos Jr. Police say that Martin is 27 years old and that he once lived in that very home. He and the babysitter got into a physical struggle, and the terrified child was actually knocked to the ground in that struggle. Police say then he took off. He escaped, but he was caught the next day after a foot chase. His relationship, if any, to the home's current residents is unclear tonight, but there is a court order for him to stay away from that home. It was already in force, and apparently just days earlier, he had been arrested for violating it both in January and in February. Now, he was able to post bond on those violations, but this time is not going to be so easy because police are now requesting a new batch of charges against him, including aggravated burglary, aggravated battery, aggravated kidnapping, and child endangerment. And at this time, bond for him is set at $500,000. And whether he can post that one or not, I am guessing a whole lot of sleepless nights might be in Mr. Villalobos' future. Can't imagine what it will be like for that child and that babysitter, wondering if there's something under the bed every time they go to bed for the rest of their lives. Okay, a couple things to tell you about. If you have been checking out my podcast lately, thank you. It's called Drop Dead Serious. You can get it everywhere that you find your podcasts. And right now, I've got a really cool conversation that is picking apart that fabulous new docudrama called Adolescence. If you haven't seen Adolescence, Netflix, go. You've got to see it. It is incredible. And Dr. John Duffy, this is his bailiwick. This is his wheelhouse. He walks me all through this incredible series and tells me all the things that are very realistic about what he does in his practice with kids and what you see in the Adolescence series. I'm telling you, I am vouching for this series. You got the weekend ahead of you. Definitely watch it. Also, Karen Reed, her jury is getting picked next week, and I've got a big podcast dropping on Monday going through the whole Karen Reed docuseries. All the clips, all the comments. Did she do herself a disservice or a service by doing the doc? Check that podcast out on Monday.